I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I'd like to talk about Sade Sati. This is something that so many people ask me about. What is it and how will it affect you? So Sade Sati actually means 7.5 years. And the reason why it equates to 7.5 years is because it's all about Saturn coming to your natal moon in your chart. So when we look at Saturn, we talk about how long it will remain in a sign. So Saturn remains in a sign for 2.5 years. So Saturn being in the sign before your natal moon, the sign of your natal moon, and the sign after your natal moon equates to the transit of Sade Sati. So here we go, Saturn being in a sign for 2.5 years before your natal moon, 2.5 years with your natal moon, and that equates to 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, that equates to 5 years, then 2.5 years that it spends in the sign after your natal moon will come to 7.5 years. So it essentially means Saturn's transit to your natal moon. And as Saturn approaches your natal moon and it comes to the sign before, it starts. And it's not like it's as intense as when it's in the same sign as your natal moon, but things start. It's like a ray of light. It's dim and it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger till it's at full force when it is on your natal moon. So it's when Saturn's in the same sign as your moon. And then it begins to dissipate like a light, slowly moves away, dissipates and leaves. So you've got a build-up period, and then you've got a period where it dissolves and goes into an ending. So it's not like Saturn hits your moon and it's over. It's like before and after for an entire 7.5 year period. But Saturn is the planet that deals with discipline, focus, stability, grounding, diligence, perseverance. So this is the planet that gives structure to everything in life. And it is the teacher. More than anything, Saturn teaches us our karmic lessons. So this is what Sade Sati brings us. And it's the most important time because here we learn, or we have the opportunity to learn the most valuable lessons that we have come here in this lifetime to learn when Saturn comes to the natal moon. Now the moon in a chart represents our emotions, our feelings, our sense of security, our mother. All of these things equate to how we perceive our world because at an early age, the essence of security, love, and protection that came from the mother does flavor the filters of how we view our world. So the moon in a chart tells you everything about how your perception is. It is actually, the moon is the mind, feelings, emotions, security. So bring Saturn into the picture, Saturn crossing over the moon. It's a time that you have to grow up and get serious. It's a time when we learn our most valuable hardcore lessons. Saturn puts you through the school of hard knocks. You learn through hardship. But these are the lessons we never forget. These are the lessons that make us stronger in who we are. And so when we go through Sade Sati, it really does depend what house our natal moon's in, what house it's in, because that's the area of life that will come under the most direct pressure. Then again, it depends on how the moon, the natal moon, is aspected in your chart. So that's going to be relative to how things are going to affect. And another variable is what dasha are you in at the time. If you're in a very difficult dasha, this will add to the intensity of the problems, such as if you're in Saturn's Mahadasha during Sade Sati, it's going to be more intense because whatever dasha you're in, that planet becomes more intense in your natal chart and in transit as well. So This is the power of Sade Sati that can transform, change your life. But let me just say this. Sade Sati is never fun. But fun is not what we're talking about. Growing up, getting serious, and getting our work done spiritually is what Sade Sati really is about. And the way that we process information and deal with Sade Sati really does make us who we become in terms of the strengths that it develops in our character, who we become. This is telling. This is so interesting. But I find it fascinating that it deals with the natal moon more than anything. You see, the moon is that significant. The moon in a chart, remember, is what sets the stage for our entire life's experiences through the dashas. So you see what nakshatra your moon is in. The planet that rules that nakshatra starts your whole life cycles of your dashas. And that, therefore, where your natal moon is determines your whole life experiences. This is the value of where your moon is. And put Saturn over it, boy, is that intense. So I want to show you a few charts to give you a further understanding of how Sade Sati can be. And before I show you these charts, I want you to realize that the moon is the mother, and many times people can have difficulty with their mothers at the time. Maybe there's illness, maybe there's times that you grow up in conflict with the mother. And all at the same time, remember that the moon is our sense of security, and so therefore it'll be a time of heavy feelings and emotions. So always Sade Sati is intense. That's why it has such an influence during the time that transiting Saturn comes to the moon. Okay, so let's put up the chart of ex-President Bill Clinton. We will better understand the effects of how Saturn affected his moon. So putting up Bill Clinton's chart, we have him born August 19th, 1946, and the time I'm using is 8:30 a.m. in Hope, Arkansas. And for Bill Clinton, his moon is in Aries in the 8th house. Now notice his natal moon is all by itself. There is Rahu and Uranus on one side, which do not count in terms of the protection that the moon receives from the planets. So the moon is by itself, it's isolated. So realize that Clinton, when he came into the world, while his mother was carrying him, his father died before he was born. And then he had a stepfather who abused his mother and beat him. This is the effects of an isolated moon in the chart, being all alone, not feeling a sense of protection. But let's talk about the events that occurred in his life during the time that he was actually impeached while he was president, during the Monica Lewinsky trial. He was impeached, but they let him go on and finish out as president. So that was in the year of 1998. And if you look up where was transiting Saturn in 1998, you guessed it, in Aries, on his natal moon in the 8th house. Now let me explain something else about what's going on here. Now I'm not going to have Saturn in these charts. I'm just going to tell you where Saturn was at that time. So I'm going to point an arrow to the house that Saturn was transiting during this time. And during the time that he was impeached in 1998, Saturn was in Aries. Now there was a buildup before that all of this Monica Lewinsky trial was surfacing years before, when of course Saturn was in Pisces. Then by the time it was in full force on his natal moon, it was in Aries. and then the dissipation of moving away from the effects of this powerful, horrendous event that had to affect him deeply. Now here's another clue about Sade Sati. 9 times out of 10, if not always, people have relationship problems during Sade Sati. This is not spoken of, but I have seen this repeatedly in everyone's charts. It's a time when relationships are stressed and strained, and there can be some major issues. I would imagine he had some major issues with his wife, Hillary, at the time of the Monica Lewinsky trial, because he was guilty. But another thing is, the 8th house deals with disgrace, humiliation, and scandals. His moon's there, and Saturn came and brought this all to the surface, so there's a big lesson to be learned. And you know what? I think he did well. He admitted it. He could have gone on and said it never happened, never happened, never happened, but he admitted it. Many people don't ever admit it. And you know what's interesting? Once he finally admitted it and we moved on, the public pretty much forgave him. It's like people don't like to be lied to. And once the truth came out and he admitted it, everyone kind of let it go. I don't know that Hillary let it go, but you know, one way or another. This was the effects of the 7.5 years dealing with President Clinton during that time of the Monica Lewinsky trial. So another chart I want to look at that's pretty current right now is Jeff Bezos. And he was born January 12th, 1964. The time I'm using is 11:33 a.m. in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So note where his natal moon is, in Sagittarius. And guess what just came out? He's getting a divorce around January of 2019. Guess where Saturn was? Sagittarius. And all of these things started coming up and about Amazon. Remember Jeff Bezos, he's determined as one of the richest men in the world, if not the richest. He is a multi-billionaire. Owner of Amazon. All this stuff hits the roof. Everyone's looking at Amazon, and he is going through a very, very difficult time. He's going to have to split up his fortune with his wife. And there's been losses in Amazon. Of course, he will retrieve things. Let me explain something interesting about this chart. Now, Saturn has been approaching his moon for some time. You know, when Saturn's in Scorpio, now it's in Sagittarius and everything hits the fan. And about his work, things are under scrutiny and problems have been arising. This is the most difficult time, Sade Sati. And there's been note of his affair and with another woman and all of these things coming out because his moon is in the 10th house. This is his career, but his public recognition. The 10th house is your reputation. Saturn's on his moon here. And it's approaching, he has a lot of planets here, the Sun, K2, and Mercury. But here's something very interesting I'm going to add into this mix. Transiting Jupiter is about to come into Sagittarius. It will touch foot in there for 3 weeks in April, which will soften a lot of this. And then it will come into Sagittarius and remain starting November of 2019, and it will remain there throughout most of 2020. So you'll see he'll make a revival and things won't be as bad. A lot of people that have their moon in Sagittarius and Capricorn kind of lucked out during this Sade Sati. Why? Because Jupiter's going to be there lessening the blow tremendously. So the next chart I want to look at is, now I tried to think of who had a really, really terrible time during during the time that Saturn might have been close to their moon. And one that came to mind, I think had a really, really horrible time, was Phil Hartman. Phil Hartman was the comedian with Saturday Night Live and, you know, did a lot of movies. He was just a really, really great entertainer. What happened in the year of 1998, remember in 1998 Saturn was in Aries. Well, let's put up his chart and we'll see. Phil Hartman, I have him born September 24th, 1948 at 5 p.m. in Brantford, Canada. And let's put his chart up. Remember in 1998, thinking about Clinton, Saturn was where? Aries then. Look at where his moon is. In Taurus. This was the beginning of Sade Sati in 1998 when his wife went off the deep end with mental illness and got a gun out and shot and killed him while he was sleeping and killed herself. Horrific, horrific event. But he was in Sade Sati. Saturn was in Aries, the sign before his natal moon, which is in Taurus. So that's what I wanted you to see with that chart. Another one, this is very controversial. Now, I do not have a time for this woman, but if you have ever seen the Netflix documentary on Jan Broberg, Abducted in Plain Sight, you're going to want to look at her chart. Now, I don't want to tell you any gory details about this, but I will say that she was kidnapped. And watch that. This is, you know, this Netflix documentary is not for the faint of heart. Let me just warn you. Watch at your own discretion. But I did find when she was born without the time. So putting up her chart, I put for 12 noon, but remember, don't look at the houses. Just look where her moon is, right? That's all I want you to look for. So I have her born July 31st, 1962, and the place of birth was Pocatello in Idaho. So notice where her natal moon is, which is in Cancer. She was abducted in 1974. So looking up where Saturn was at that time that she was abducted, actually she was abducted 2 times, but the first time it was in the autumn. They said on a warm autumn day in 1974. So I had to look up where was Saturn in 1974. It was in Gemini. It was in Gemini. Look at her moon being in Cancer. So that was the beginning of the Sade Sati, and it was the beginning of this horrendous abduction that went on for years. So that was the beginning of her Sade Sati with the moon in Cancer and transiting Saturn is in Gemini. So that was a very, very difficult time in her life. So is Sade Sati always terrible? Well, I have one that's not so bad. Let's look now at the chart of pro golfer Jordan Spieth, which many of you may not know who he is, but he was 21 years old when he won the Masters, which is the ultimate game in golf. When you win that, you know, that's it. You've reached the top game of the sport. So I wanted to look at Jordan Spieth because I actually know the family. He is from Dallas. My son is very good friends with his brother, so I happen to know a lot about this period of his life. So as I watched Jordan on TV, and I knew he was in Sade Sati, let's put up Jordan Spieth's chart. I have Jordan born July 27th, 1993, and I did get the time from his mother, 11:40 p.m. in Dallas, Texas. So I want you to notice where his natal moon is. And his moon is 7 degrees of Scorpio. The day of the Masters, which was April of 2015. I'm watching him on TV, knowing Saturn was almost exactly within a degree or two from his natal moon. And I'm thinking, there's no way he's going to win. But I was wrong. He won the Masters at 21 years old with transiting Saturn exactly on his natal moon. What made this different? His moon is in the 9th house. This is quite different than the other individuals. The 9th house is the house of luck and blessings. So thank goodness that this was the effects. But hey, I don't know what his relationships were, but I do know that there was some difficulty with family. So, So Sade Sati isn't always like you're going to achieve great success or great disaster. It will affect your emotional body. But Saturn is discipline, focus, direction. It gives us the ability to achieve with hard work and learn from our mistakes. So Saturn on his moon gave him the accomplishment of this win, which was one of the greatest achievements in his golf career. So where was Saturn? It was almost exactly on the moon in 2015, April, Scorpio, in his 9th house. But like I said before, you got to really look at the dashas. You got to really look at other transits going on. And one thing I did notice in terms of transits, and I'm a big proponent of transits and the dashas, but the transits are so important. You can have a major transit hit that creates an event that the dashas may not indicate. The dashas are the general gist of what's going on, but the transits are the creators of events. And I happened to notice on the day that he won the Masters, was when transiting Rahu was exactly transiting his natal Jupiter. Now let me have you realize that this was so important, I want to say for Jordan, because Rahu transiting Jupiter equates to wins. It equates to him an expansion, because Jupiter is opportunities. I'm talking about his natal Jupiter, and Rahu expands it. And Jupiter, by the fact of having a Pisces ascendant, rules his chart. And Pisces is his ascendant, because remember we use Jupiter as the old rulership, so Jupiter rules Pisces, but Jupiter also rules Sagittarius, right? So if you look at his chart, natal Jupiter has Rahu exactly on it that day, but Jupiter rules the 10th house because Sagittarius is on the 10th house. So Jupiter rules both the 10th and the 1st house, and transiting Rahu on that Jupiter gave him this win, although there was probably some emotional issues going on in his life. So don't always think that Sade Sati will equate to something difficult. But remember this, it is always about our growth and our learning and our karma, our karmic debts. What are we here to learn through? What are we here to grow through? That's what Sade Sati is here to teach us. So with that, I'd like to close. If you would like more information on me, you can always go to my website, which is galacticcenter.org. Or if you would like to learn Vedic astrology, go to my university website, which is University of Vedic Astrology.com. Thank you.